Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to do a little bit of a project that honestly I had anticipated months ago. When I first started looking at buying one of these cars, I checked out parts and was looking at availability of some different things. And I remember reading the description of a very specific, seemingly obscure part as a quote, ticking time bomb, and thinking to myself, if I'm ever lucky enough to own one of these, that's one of the first things I'm going to replace. Then I promptly forgot about that, and then a couple months later, bought the car and loaded it up on the trailer, drove it back to Minnesota, and at about 25 degrees standing outside trying to unload this from the trailer, grabbed onto the door handle and bang, tipping time bomb went off. So we now are going to do the first of what will be many projects to restore and bring this little guy back up to its former glory. And we're going to replace the exterior door handles on, and I can't believe I'm finally able to say this, a 1981 DMC-12 DeLorean. Here we go. All right, so here she is, the 1981 DMC-12 DeLorean. I've wanted this car for almost 30 years. It took me a long time to get to a point where I could buy one and get one in this condition. Mechanically, she is sound, purrs like a kitten, drives like a dream, a whole lot of fun. There are, however, some things that are just the natural byproduct of this car sitting, being stored and viewed for 40 years and not being driven. Cars are meant to be driven, and when you just park them, things dry out, things start to fall apart, and it's just not a good situation. Plus, this thing is a joy to drive. I don't know how anyone could just sit and park and look at these, but I mean, let's be honest. I know how people could just sit and look at these. They're missing out. So the part in question that we're going to deal with is part of the oh so famous doors on this car, and it should be right there. Instead, it's right here. The door handles on these cars were plastic, and after 4 decades, this plastic gets brittle and dries out. And then when you go to grab this door handle to open it, it just breaks. So you can see it just sheared off right at its mount point. Now all of the replacement parts for these are metal, and that's what we're going to be dealing with today is a full-on replacement set from DeLoreanGo in the UK. There are other manufacturers and other suppliers here in the US you can go with as well. I'm just figuring this out. Thought I would give them a try, and they haven't disappointed. This thing got here really, really fast, in good condition, and we're ready to go. So we're going to do what I've been doing now for the last 3 days to open up the door so we can get inside this. Because to replace this door handle, we have to go from the inside of the door. So the first thing we're going to do is open it. Now, if you have had this happen, hopefully you're able to get in the other side of the car and roll your window down, because then you can still open the door by reaching in, grabbing onto the inside handle, pulling up, and there she goes. Still gives me a thrill every single time. All right, so here's the inside of the door card on the door. You'll see it's kind of got the sail panel that comes down, and then this armrest with all of your switches, and that runs down along the bottom. Most of these are glued because the pressure clips have since dried out, and somebody just threw glue on it instead of buying new clips. That's lazy. I'll be taking that out eventually, but not today, because to get to the door handle, which is right about here, we need to get right there, and that's part of this top piece. Now on the DeLorean, this door card is 2 different pieces. There's a bottom chunk that's actually bolted to the door, and then there's this top part which is more or less cosmetic and is only held in by a couple of those little fir tree body clips. So we're going to do those first and take those off. Easiest way to do that is, at least to start, having the door closed or partially closed and accessing through the window. Okay, so the door is closed and it's resting on my knee. I'm intentionally wearing sweatpants for this video so that I can do this without worrying about scratching up anything on the car. Yeah, not just because I'm a dad. So what we're going to do then is loosen this panel. Now, this panel is held in by a little channel back here. It actually sits kind of wedged into this armrest, and the bottom is loose. Now the pressure clips are all the way along the top edge. So what we're going to do, you can see it's kind of started pulling up here a little bit. That's one of those clips right there. But we're just going to kind of work along the top, and we're going to free this panel by lifting it up. Now those clips just kind of wiggle free. We're probably going to break several of them. My plan is to replace them, but they all point straight down. So we're just gonna work our way along the top, working this free. And as soon as this is loose, we'll be able to open the door and just lift this panel kind of straight up and out. So easier to do this with two hands. So I'm gonna put the phone down. And I'm gonna work my way along the side here and just kind of ease this guy up as we go, just using my fingers. I'm not gonna pry it or anything. And then the same thing all the way here to this point, and we'll get those loose all the way along. All right, so you can see, like I said, they're just these little fir tree clips. These are like normal body clips. And they go down into these holes along the side. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 9 of them going along this edge. And once this is loose, the whole thing is just able to be pulled free. So we're gonna lift the door up and we should be able to slide this right out of the way. Okay, so this slides straight up. There are some tabs that stick down. See these kind of plastic pieces that come down, and then there's one in the front and some pressure clips in here that those slide into. But a little bit of just kind of gentle pull and this will come right out, and then this can get carefully set aside. And that's going to give us access to the inside of the door, which is covered by a waterproof membrane kind of vapor barrier thing. Okay, we're sitting in the car and I've got the door held down because it does want to open on me because the torsion bar is very nice on this one. But you can see inside here all of the protected mechanisms for the window, for the door latch, for the central locking system. All of that's back behind this little vapor barrier. And I thought we were going to need to remove that, but we don't. What we're actually going to need to do is go in here. So what you can see down there is the inside of this lock, or of the door latch assembly. And a couple little cables here. I'm going to turn on the light so you can see this a little bit better. All right, so looking inside, you see there's the latch. There's this one cable coming down to the other side. These are bidirectional, so it doesn't matter which side you put them on, left or right. That's why there's kind of an unused piece over on the right-hand side that you can see. But what we're going to need to do is free this cable and then remove those 2 bolts on the inside. That's going to allow this entire piece to come free from the car in 2 different chunks. And I'll show you what the replacement part looks like so you can visualize that a little bit better. All right, back outside the car here. Here's the replacement piece. And you can see it's one assembly that includes this plastic cup right here. So that's that, as well as the outer handle, and then the springs that cause it to recoil back, and then these 2 captive bolts. So on the inside of the car, there's a metal plate, and there are 2 nuts that thread onto the back of these. So we're gonna pull those out and hope, against hope, that I don't drop those down into the door. And then we'll reuse that interior plate. So once this is free, and we've got the plate out of the way, we should just have to free the pull cable from this one side of the bracket, and then the whole thing should be able to pull out of the door. New one will drop in and we should be able to connect it directly. Okay, I've stumbled on a method that actually worked pretty well for this. So I've got a long ratchet extension, or medium, I guess, ratchet extension, and then a deep socket 10mm. Of course, this is a 10mm bolt that we're pulling out. What that's let me do with the door up at this angle, we're about like this into it. So as it's pulled out, that bolt has fallen into the end of my socket and stays nicely captive in there, so that I can just dump it out and have access to it and not have it fall inside the door. So if you have a long or a deep socket with the door in the upright position, you should be able to get this to pull out without worrying about losing it inside. Now, I haven't done anything to the wire that's connected to this. My hope is that once this is released, I'll be able to pull the entire assembly out and detach the wire out here where I have easy access, and then hook it to the new one and drop the whole thing back in. It looks like there's enough slack to allow that. We'll see if that's true in just a second. Okay, we're 2 for 2 on the bolts. What I was wrong about is that being an adapter plate in there. That is just the inside of the stainless door. I'm still not used to working in the car that looks like this. So that was my own naivete showing. So now that that's released though, I should be able to wiggle this whole thing out. And like I said, there's enough slack that that should pull free. You can kind of see it's coming right now. So I get that pulled out of there like that. Get that all to come free. Here's the actual latch mechanism with the springs, and that'll give me access to this guy. So I'm going to release this from this little cup here and hold on to it so I can attach it to the next one. Looks like it's just pressure fit in there. So kind of stretch this piece out like you would be if the door handle was being opened, and that'll come out of that little cup, and then the whole thing can come free from the back. All right, we've got the old broken back bracket removed from this cable. Now, there's probably a better way to do that, but since I'm throwing this entire piece away anyway, what I did was to break off one of the little receiving tabs that held the little ball at the end of that cable in place. Sorry, my focus is a little bit weird here. We just broke that tab off since I'm throwing this away anyway, and then that was able to just come free and slide out. Now on the new one, what I'll end up doing is seating the ball there, stretching it, and then kind of getting it to drop into the new bracket. First, I'm gonna clean up a little bit here on the stainless. All right, we're all cleaned up. And if you're thinking at this point, hey, that's stainless steel, that's not supposed to rust, you're correct. In fact, it wasn't actually the stainless that was rusted at all, but that cheap piece of metal that was pushed against it, that had started to rust. It was just some contact stuff that was holding on, pretty much just wiped right off. Okay, so now we'll grab the new piece and we'll get started with the replacement. So here's our new part. You can see it will be a direct drop in, so I have to get the cable attached. Now the biggest difference between this piece and the piece that we're removing is all of this texture that you see and everything related to it. So this bracket coming down through here, all of this is metal. The only thing that's plastic is part of this piece that goes up against the car, this little pocket. But everything that matters, everything that wears out is metal. And these springs are all brand new. It's all one big assembly. So this should be the only time we ever have to do this. Now I will say from DeLoreanGo, this was a little bit stiff. It didn't actuate very well. It was kind of rubbing. I think what was going on is the hole that these rivets go through was a little small, or the rivets itself were a little bit over tightened. So there was some friction that was stopping this from moving cleanly, or it would open up, but then it would get stuck and then kind of snap back down into place once the friction was less. So I used just a little bit of white lithium grease, kind of right at the inside points where this pin goes through the two brackets, and that smoothed it out immediately, and now it works great. So I'm gonna get the cable seated here, and I'll show you that, and then we'll sink this into the door and bolt it in from the other side. All right, I've got the first part of the cable seated. What I did for this, I just grabbed onto this and just pulled, kind of loosened it, and then was able to get it seated into this first part of the arm. Now I'll just bend the cable and drop this little indent right here, the neck on the silver part, into this channel on the black, and we'll be all locked in. At that point, we'll slide her into the door. So just a quick two-step process, a whole lot easier to get it to release than it was, as far as reinstalling, than it was on the other side with the old part. So nothing needs to be broken, which again, a lot harder now that this is all metal. All right, so we've got everything seated. Now to reinstall the bolts, or the nuts rather, what I'm gonna do is use a shallower 10mm attached to a screwdriver here so that I can have the nut sitting in the end, thread it on and get it started, and then I might switch back to the other one. We'll see to get it really snugged in. And just like that, we are fully reinstalled. So now we'll shut the door and test it and see if this is working for us. But it seemed to actuate pretty well and to snap back each time. So let's see where we're at. All right, moment of truth. Hey, look at that working door handle. All right, so our last step is going to be to reinstall this upper door panel. We're going to do that by first threading this sort of long hook into this space right up here under this little bit of insulation. So that kind of threads in, and then the whole panel sort of lifted up that way will go like this and set back in. We'll line up the tabs along the bottom as we go, making sure that we get the top tab lined up into this hole as well. And then once it's all seated that way, just kind of push it straight down to seat those clips. All right, panel is reseated again, just sort of fed that edge in and then got my tabs lined up all the way down, got it kind of left to right aligned. It's not clipped along the top, so then I'll close the door and go along the top and make sure that those are all lined up so I don't break any of those off. And just push them down so that they're all seated all the way across, and we'll be done. So now that the project's done, just one kind of comment about fit and finish. Notice my alignment's not perfect on this. And if we look at the top, there's a little bit of a gap. where the two pieces of metal connect. And I think that's just a difference in build style. This is the original kind of lower cup piece of this, which has a rubberized coating which goes well beyond the actual pad. The new one doesn't. It's just metal. So it has a more extreme cutoff at the top. So it doesn't fit quite as nice. I don't know if that's a unique characteristic of the part from DeLoreanGo. I may actually try returning this one handle to them and picking up one from DeLorean Midwest or a few of the kind of US based distributors and see if it's a different build and a different style, and if it fits a little bit nicer. And if it does, this guy might get swapped out. For the moment though, that allows me to open and close my door, and that's all that really matters, so that I can take this places and lock it without leaving the window open, since that's the only way I've been able to open the door for the last few days. And that's going to wrap us up on this one. Not an overly hard project. Honestly, you can do it in about probably 15-20 minutes. It's not too bad. I'm not, like I said, super happy with the fit and finish of this particular part. I'll deal with that over time. But this then being the end of a DIY Dad video, and a special one at that, with it being the first one on this car, I do, of course, still owe you a dad joke. Now, when I bought this car 3 days ago, it had just over 10,000 miles on it. It's a 40-year-old car. So I've been asked that question, why? You know, how could it only have 10,000 miles on it? And my answer is, like most DeLoreans, which were made famous by Back to the Future, it was only driven from time to time. All right, remember, with any DIY project, most important step is just to do it. Most people aren't going to see the flaws unless you point them out to them. Have a great day, drive safe. Join me for more crazy content related to this car over time. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye.